Hey everybody, welcome to this week's podcast.
Hi there.
This week we're going to do something a slight bit different. It's not really considered a criminal case. There are sort of crime elements to it, which we sort of feel were overlooked. There's also some conspiracy elements to it. So we are going to talk today about the case of Elisalam. And just so everyone knows, you may or may not know, in the case it talks about unaliving. So if that is not a topic that you are interested in, we just want to give you the heads up. It will come up every now and again, but there is a lot more to it, of course.
Yes, quite a mystery. So we're going to get right into that now. So Elisa Lam was born Lam Ho Yi on April 30th, 1991 in Vancouver, British Columbia. She was a student at the University of British Columbia, and in 2010 she started a blog on Blogspot. She called it Ether Fields, which was a fashion and also an account of her day-to-day life. In a blog from January 2010, Elisa talked about her recent struggles with mental illness, which was affecting her attendance at school. So she had to drop many of her classes because of it. And her education was important to her.
Yeah, so I believe what it was is she was in post-secondary for 3 to 4 years. But because of all the time that she had missed, technically of the 3 to 4 years, she only maybe completed like a year, like 2 semesters of classes, because she had missed so much time due to her illness. So of course it was weighing heavy on her.
So in early 2012, Elisa decided to give up on the blog she'd started and start another one on Tumblr. In this one, she didn't talk about her personal life, just fashion. So Elisa had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression, and she was prescribed many medications. Her family kept this private, and according to her family, Elisa didn't have a history of unaliving or any attempts. So
that they knew of, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not, but she probably didn't want to tell her parents either, you know?
Yeah.
She was probably embarrassed about that.
I wonder if they knew about the blogs even.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe
like, I'm pretty sure that the Blogspot blogs were pretty popular, but I think Tumblr was the sort of the thing at the time, so I think she had a good one there.
So Elisa had a history of not taking her medication for her disorder, and on several occasions she suffered hallucinations that would cause her to hide under a bed for refuge. She was hospitalized many times for these episodes.
Yeah, so I thought it sounds absolutely terrifying. I feel horrible for her.
Elisa decided to take a train and a bus and make her own way down to California, where she would post a photo journal on social media. She arrived in Los Angeles on January 26, 2013.
Yeah, so I guess she was pretty much an adult, legally an adult, but I don't know how I feel about how her family was. I guess they can't stop her, but I guess I was sort of confused as to why they would let her go on her own on a trip to California. I mean,
well, considering if she had a history of not taking her medication and she was prone to episodes. After 2 days in Los Angeles, she checked into the Hotel Cecil in downtown Skid Row. Initially, she was staying in a shared room on the 5th floor, but after 2 days she was moved into her own room due to complaints from her roommates, and the hotel manager was alerted about her odd behavior.
Yeah, which is so sad. So that shows like instantly her state when she ended up in California. So
Can't imagine what must have happened on her trip down there too. Like,
yeah,
didn't seem like there was anything to note about her journey, but
no, and even through that trip, she kept in contact with her parents, but also she was keeping her blog up on Tumblr, so she was still sort of in the right frame of mind. Maybe that's just what sort of anchored her and just kept her, going, was having to talk to her parents every day, but also to keep her Tumblr going. So, like, there's a lot going on in her brain. The poor girl.
Yeah. So according to the hotel manager, Elisa was leaving notes for her roommates that said, "Go home, go away," and she would lock the door to the room and would require them give her a password to get in, which would be frustrating, especially if you didn't quite understand her condition.
Yeah, and I'm sort of wondering about the manager of the hotel, because just knowing what was happening, maybe it's because of where it was. I mean, on Skid Row, I guess there's, with all the homeless and the addicts and whatnot that live there, I'm sure it's just mental illness issues all over the place. So maybe they just didn't care.
It's probably
it was normalized, I guess, in that area and just sort of pushed aside. Or I just kind of wonder, like, put in that situation, wouldn't you contact someone, or just to let them know about how she's acting? Because clearly she's very unwell here, and they just sort of ignored it, I guess.
It should have been concerning to them, especially if she was by herself. Like, maybe they didn't know she'd traveled a long way.
Yeah, well, maybe, I don't know. They must have known she came from Canada. I'm thinking she probably would have mentioned it at some point to someone, even the roommates. So, a young girl, sort of very unwell and on her own, would have been super concerning to me. So the hotel manager I guess it was just something you saw every day there. I don't know. It's weird.
Could have just been, like you said, just didn't care, maybe. But
money, I guess.
Yeah.
As long as she's paying, she's staying.
A few days before her disappearance, Elisa attended a live recording of the Conan O'Brien show, but she was removed from the premises due to disruptive behavior. So again, she's attending public events even, and I don't know if anyone contacted her parents at the time, seeing as how she was alone, or maybe she didn't tell them she had family or something.
I don't know. I guess just being Los Angeles, I'm assuming it's just so heavily populated, and I guess that sort of thing it's just better just to, out of sight, out of mind sort of thing.
Yeah.
You can't exactly say it's a tight-knit community. It's a huge metropolis, and it's not like being in the small towns,
No. So as Holly mentioned, Elisa was keeping in contact with her parents every day while she was traveling, and it was right up until the day that she went missing on January 13th, 2013 that they stopped hearing from her. On that day, Elisa was intending on checking out of the Hotel Cecil, and she was going to move on to Santa Cruz. Her parents didn't hear from her from that day on, and they called the LA Police Department, or LAPD, as you may know. Her family immediately flew to LA to participate in the search.
Yeah, I think it was within 24 hours they were there, if not within 12 hours.
Which is lucky they're capable of doing that, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's Vancouver and Los Angeles. There's not that much distance there. They can fly there in a matter of a couple hours.
That's true. So hotel staff who saw Elisa that day said that she was alone. The only person to see her alive on that day was a bookstore owner, who said that Elisa was very lively, outgoing, and very friendly, and she was shopping for gifts for her family.
Yeah, and she was very interactive with this bookstore owner. They interviewed her for, I believe it was a documentary on Netflix, and Elisa was saying, do you recommend this book? Do you think this is a good book for my mom or for my cousin? And she was trying to buy gifts for everyone. And she was also talking to the shop owner about she was looking for books that weren't too heavy so she can carry them back for her family. So this is a major point. At this point, it seems like she is living and wants to live because she's making those future plans, bringing these gifts back for her family. So that plays into the mystery a little bit. Not that something within her mental illness couldn't have turned that around. I mean, it can happen just like that. But, I mean, at least at this point, she was still making plans for the future.
Well, and she was considering her family, too, so
Yeah.
It's not like she wouldn't have contacted them if she wanted to.
Yeah, she was about to move on. I think it was that day or the day after, anyhow. And then after Santa Cruz, I believe she was going back home to Vancouver.
The LAPD searched the hotel to the extent that they could. They searched her room and even had dogs go through the building, including the rooftop, but the dogs were unsuccessful in detecting her scent. The police could not legally search every room in the hotel due to probable cause. They would have to obtain a search warrant based upon the belief that a crime had been committed. They did not have a solid confirmation that anything deadly happened to her. She simply disappeared. Flyers with her photo were handed out around the neighborhood, posted online, and drew interest from the media. It brought the case to the public's attention. So on February 13th, she'd been missing for 1 week. The LAPD released a 2.5-minute video of her last known sighting. This was the infamous elevator footage.
So we have that footage. You've probably seen it already. I found a fairly good quality version of it. It was 4K when I downloaded it, so hopefully it's coming out just as clear. So we're going to put it right here. And that was very, very famous footage. I think almost everybody around the world has seen it. It's still confusing to this day. And let us know in the comments what you think. What you think was going on here.
Let us know down below. So in the footage, Elisa is alone. She makes unusual moves and gestures, and she appears to press every button on the elevator panel. So she peers into the hallway, then leaves the elevator at one point while the door is opened. When the doors don't close, she returns, then leaves again, then the doors close. Video gained worldwide attention due to her strange behavior, and is being analyzed and discussed by countless people.
And it still, actually to this day, is being analyzed, although it's sort of a closed case, so to speak. But still, it's still a mystery.
Yeah.
So even though it's basically a closed case, there are still many, many theories that are floating around out there. And it's not that they're going to reopen it, but, and this is the reason why we're making this podcast. We wanted to explore these theories, because it's very, very interesting, and it might not be as cut and dry as everybody thought. The first theory is that Elisa was trying to get the elevator to move because she was trying to get away from someone chasing her. So that was sort of, I think that's what everybody was assuming at first, and it still looks like that, because in the video it looks like she is communicating with someone, whether they were actually someone or she was hallucinating, but it did appear that she looked like she was being chased.
And she, like we said, she checked the hallways, and then at one point you can see she kind of hides in the corner away from the hallway so that maybe somebody passing by wouldn't see her, especially since the doors wouldn't close.
Yeah, because, she was actually playing with the open and close buttons as well, so it looks like she was on purpose trying to keep the doors open, but then also purposefully trying to close them right away. So it's confusing. Very, very interesting footage. The second theory is that she may have been under the influence of illegal narcotics. So
And on Skid Row,
she could get just about anything there, and even, some sort of psychedelic. It was just another theory. I don't think that there was anything actually found in her system once the autopsy was done. A little bit more about that later, about what was actually contained in her system. But yeah, she definitely had the means to get whatever she wanted. The third theory is that she was having a psychotic episode. So,
which they seem to be quite frequent. And as we mentioned, she was prone to not taking her medication, so...
Yeah. And it seems to me that when they came to that conclusion, they sort of ended it. This is where the case ended. This is what was determined. But just doesn't seem... It possibly played a role, but I think there's a little bit more to it.
It's just from the video you could see perhaps it's possible she was having an episode, but when you hear about what eventually happened, it's kind of hard to think that that would be the result of that.
Yeah, that's sort of the thing that gets me. And I'm not going to claim to know very much about what she was going through in her illness, but I imagine it definitely contributed to the end result. Some viewers argued that the video had been tampered with before being made public. The timestamp apparently obscured, which it was.
Yeah.
Parts had been slowed down, and nearly a minute of footage had been removed. So if this is true, it could have been done to protect the identity of someone who had been in the elevator or walked by the elevator, and it may or may not be related to the crime. So even if the hotel cut out that footage because one of their guests walked by, it doesn't mean the guest is the culprit. It just means, they don't want that guest being on TV. Just privacy for the person.
The thing too, if they did cut out somebody walking by, perhaps she was talking to somebody who happened to pass and was in the hallway.
But also, who is this? I mean, if that were the case, they cut out a person, so this person probably would have seen her acting a little strange around the elevators, or maybe the person was actually in the elevator. Maybe they didn't walk by. Maybe there was somebody in the elevator and just sort of got, estranged out and then decided to exit. So maybe that's what it was.
Well, you can see the gestures she's making as she's talking to somebody. They look like she's explaining something, and she kind of points to the elevator and, like you're explaining something.
That's what I think. Like maybe the person was in the elevator and the person left, and she was sort of talking to them down the hall, like, I'm sorry, or, it's a theory. It's a theory, but there was missing footage. It was chopped, and also because it was chopped, they obscured the timing, and apparently have never explained why. The hotel just said, this is the footage we have, and sort of that was it. To me, I would, maybe looking at it, I would say, oh, it looks a little... What can you do, though? I mean, I guess we were lucky to have the footage at all. So it's also noted that at times, while Elisa appears to speak to someone, her mouth is pixelated, obscuring her words. So that may be bordering some conspiracy. Looking at the video, like, it's not the greatest quality video either. But I guess if you sort of look hard enough, it appears that maybe her mouth is a little pixelated.
There are points when she's in the elevator, she almost looks like she's smiling, but her mouth is pretty obscured, so it's hard to see.
Yeah, it's hard to tell whether it's even just because of the quality, or maybe it's true.
It could be, and it's kind of a shame because I know there's professional lip readers that could probably figure what she's saying. It may not necessarily tell what happened to her, but it could help to understand what was going through her mind at the time, or she would be talking about either if she was having a hallucination or she was talking to somebody.
Yeah, I never actually thought about this point, but you're right. I mean, that's just part of normal investigation, the CIA and whatnot. There is lip readers, and actually, never even considered that until right now.
Yeah, I just thought of that. there would be somebody who would be able to figure out what she was saying.
Ooh.
And again, it may not give any major clues, but at least we would know what was going on with her at the time.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Okay, mind blown.
Sorry. I should.
What little left there is of it. Okay. It was discovered that a tuberculosis test was being studied nearby the Cecil Hotel. I'm assuming it was in a smaller lab in a building nearby. And also, well, there's a little bit more to that. The name of the test was Lam Elisa, coincidentally enough. While nothing has been found connecting Elisa or her death with the tuberculosis study, it's just, basically another strange circumstance in this case.
I wonder how they discovered that too.
I guess just investigating, I suppose like in the neighborhood, if they were actually truly looking into it, they would go, sort of building to building or talk to people on the street. Maybe not because it's Skid Row, but I have no idea. But yeah, coincidentally, the name of that test was Lam Elisa.
That's very strange.
It's very strange that it's her name. What it was apparently was that, I don't know what you call them, scientists had released a tuberculosis strain into the population on Skid Row, and we're going to watch the results, and also I imagine there would be some kind of cure they were going to test. Now this also could be bordering on a little conspiracy. It's true. There was a test, and that was the name of the test. But sort of the dark side of it, testing on the on the streets. I mean, that's where it kind of goes off a little bit, but
that's a little shady. But
yeah, so the test was her name. I don't know. That seems a little weird, and seems like it should be looked into a little bit further.
Definitely should be investigated by someone.
Some have even linked her death to the Korean elevator game, a ritual of pressing buttons on an elevator in a certain order to reach another dimension. So, from what we've seen about the Korean elevator game, if I can find a sort of diagram, I will put it up here. I'll try to explain the best I can. So, this is a game that is played with an elevator. The elevator has to have at least 10 floors, I believe. The Cecil had 14 floors. So what it was you would press the elevator buttons in an exact series. You would end up apparently on the 5th floor, and then you would scoot yourself right up to the top floor, and apparently you would be in another dimension. I don't know very much about that part of it, but Elisa was actually, when this stuff was happening, this video, she was on the 5th floor in the elevator when she was pressing these buttons, and when she was,
I believe it's when you reach the 5th floor, you're supposed to be met by some kind of woman who is a spirit who takes you to the 10th floor, and you're not supposed to speak to her or look at her or...
That's right, yes.
Something?
That's what else it was about the 5th floor. So she was on the 5th floor, but it was, what was it? It was supposed to be a woman dressed in black, I believe. And so that could explain the piece of footage that's missing, or who she was talking to, or who she thought she was talking to on the 5th floor. So
she was staying on the 5th floor though.
Yeah, but it's just sort of coincidentally the 5th floor was mentioned in this this game, and that's where she ended up staying, and that's where the incident sort of happened on the elevator. So it sort of plays into this game. Maybe she chose the 5th floor.
And if there was this idea in her head of this game, and she was already prone to having hallucinations, perhaps hearing the story might have sparked the hallucinations.
Yeah. I mean, and who are we to say anything, right? Maybe this did. I mean, it depends how much you believe in sort of the paranormal, or your spirituality, or maybe this did happen. Or maybe she just felt so hard that it was happening.
Yeah.
I don't know. So that theory, it's a little bit of an iffy one. I'm not saying it's not impossible. It would be very hard to prove, but also could explain the missing footage. During the search for Elisa, hotel guests began complaining about low water pressure. Others claimed their water was black in color and had an unusual taste. The 4 water tanks on the roof of the hotel provided water to the rooms, a kitchen, and a coffee shop. So this is where it gets darker. 2 days later, the LA Coroner's Office issued a finding of an accidental drowning with bipolar disorder as a contributor factor. So you know that she was found in the water tank. In the full coroner's report, it stated she was found nude, clothing similar to what she was wearing in the elevator was found floating in the water, coated with a sand-like coating, which I never could figure out what that was, especially in water. Her watch and room key were also found with her. So there's a lot of questions here. So she was nude. If she put herself in there, did she take her clothes off and then go in there, but also bring her clothes with her?
Yeah, like she would have to have taken them off either in there or at the top of the ladder, which, from what I saw, I don't think that'd be easy.
No, it wouldn't be easy. And there were comments made that even opening the door to get into the tank was a task itself. Like, even, it would take a man, I guess sort of the ones who maintain the tanks, or, it would take them even a little bit of a struggle to open up. So how she opened it herself and got in herself is, I mean, it's mysterious. Also, in the full coroner's report, there were no findings of trauma or markings on her body. So again, that just adds to the mystery. So obviously she wasn't handled or,
Forced.
Yeah, forced, I guess. So, I mean, that's also what makes it seem as if she went in there. Some people contribute to that, saying, somebody could have had a gun and said, get in the tank. Like, they don't exactly have to be touching her to be
influencing.
Yeah, really. Yeah, exactly. That'd be scary enough, right?
And on Skid Row, it's not like that would be unheard of, I wouldn't think.
It's a thing. We just don't know. And the hotel staff said that she was by herself the whole time, like when they've seen her. So it doesn't appear like there was somebody around her. Who knows? Like, things could change at the drop of a hat.
What else was weird is why there only seemed to be security footage from the elevator and not the rest of the hotel. Because most places would have security cameras in the hallways, at least.
Well, that's part of the mystery, right? This hotel, it's a real strange one. So I don't know if you really... Majority of you may know about the Cecil Hotel. It held some very serious, well-known serial killers, such as Richard Ramirez. There were a lot of unalivings done there. It just seems to have a curse on it. Apparently it's haunted. I mean, maybe so. It's just, it has such a bad reputation, and it's just the creepiest thing. So you'd figure the owner would want cameras there because it's your business. It's on Skid Row. It's at risk every day, 24/7. Who knows what could happen?
Exactly.
So where were the other camera footages? That's the only footage they claim they had. I guess there was reasons why cameras broken or cameras not in the right spot, but yeah, that's it's the hotel. It's super negligent anyway. So around the time that Elisa went missing, there was a tuberculosis outbreak in Los Angeles, specifically downtown LA and Skid Row where the hotel's located. So that goes back to the elisalam tuberculosis project. The theory began online with users suggesting Elisa could have been sent to Los Angeles to test out a new medication for tuberculosis, putting her behavior in the days leading up to her death down to side effects from the medication. So this is, online sleuth, as we all are, I suppose, sort of putting it together. There was a lot of groups created online, Facebook groups, Yahoo groups that were looking into it. And this is sort of one of the bigger theories, and it ties into the elisalam tuberculosis test, that maybe she was part of it, maybe willingly, unknowingly part of it. Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, but there's just strange things happening out there in the world.
Well, if she was in university or college at the time, she may have had leads to people doing these types of studies, might have had contacts. Maybe it was something they were offering for money, be part of this test. Maybe she needed some at the time.
You know what? That's a whole other thing. Sort of the medical industry is notoriously very shady, and more comes out about it all the time. I think COVID sort of opened the eyes to many about just what goes on behind the scenes.
Human testing is not easy to get into either, right?
And human testing is not anything new either.
No.
So possibly, it wouldn't be beyond that industry to take advantage of people who, people on the street, or, it's just test subjects. Science goes way beyond that. Science goes beyond feelings.
Well, especially if these people, well, as far as they know, didn't have anything to lose.
Exactly. So, if something happened to these people, if they passed on, who's going to know? Who's going to care?
Yeah. And if some of them are junkies, too, which, of course, was not Elisa's case, but if some of the people in Skid Row could have been junkies, who knows what they could have told them. They could have been like, hey, man, want to try this new drug? Or
Well, I mean, this is how sort of LSD sort of got out into the public, too. And it was, that's a whole other topic that we can talk about, because it certainly took place in Canada and, across Canada, but there are some major strange cases out there involving Quebec and Ontario. But sure, don't put it past that industry. This is possible. It's possible.
Yeah.
Others suggested Elisa was a biological weapon sent to LA, but had been silenced for knowing too much about the tuberculosis outbreak. In the Netflix documentary is also discussed how Elisa studied at the University of British Columbia, which has a well-known tuberculosis research center.
Which again, that ties the two together, and it's not like large companies or organizations are not mentioned in cases where people tend to go missing or they turn up dead, that people know too much or they're going to say something.
So that takes the original theories even further, but also supported with proof, because indeed the University of British Columbia does have, I think it's the biggest tuberculosis research center in the entire country. So, like, whoa.
Yeah.
It sort of goes together. Like, are we making it go together because of these coincidences? Or is this actually what happened?
Yeah.
It seems so far-fetched until you sort of get into, like, put all of these details together, and then it makes you think, this could be so much more huge than what it was.
Yeah.
And that could also explain why it was just because of mental illness.
Yeah, there you go.
It's done.
Yeah.
It could be a cover-up. Hey, a cover-up isn't anything new either.
No.
You know?
Definitely not.
So toxicology reports showed trace evidence of prescription and non-prescription medication in her system. The bottles of pills were found in her room that coincided with the traces in her system. Also, a very small amount of alcohol. The amount of prescription medication in her system was a minor amount, consistent with someone who had recently stopped taking the medication or was under-medicated. The hotel's water tanks are not easy to access. The crime scene is on the roof of the Cecil, and only hotel staff keys unlock the doors to the roof. So
the area was already out of bounds to patrons of the hotel.
Yeah, it's way out of bounds. So they figure how she got up there was using fire escape, because apparently she couldn't. I believe the door was actually still locked to the roof.
Yeah, it was I think it was a hotel fire escape was left unlocked, and I believe during the investigation one of the dogs followed her scent basically to the window, and then it stopped there.
Yeah.
So, that seems like probably the most likely way that she got up there.
Oh, for sure. So Elisa could have used the fire escape to get onto the roof. Apparently, the window should have triggered an alarm, or the door out to the fire escape should have triggered an alarm. And the hotel staff said they obviously didn't hear the alarms go off. Also, the openings to the water tank are 10 feet up and require a ladder to reach. But there were no ladders around the water tanks.
Those ladders on the tanks, though, isn't there?
I don't think there was an accessible ladder. They probably would have put the ladders there to go up to it, but they never left. You cannot leave ladders on the water tanks because it's just a liability. If someone happened to get out there for whatever reason, they don't want to say, here, there's a ladder, climb up to the water tank. Like, they don't want to invite a liability. So the ladders were not on the tanks. But you will see pictures and footage after where there are ladders, but they weren't actually attached. They were put there, and it shows them there because that was after they checked the tanks.
And she didn't seem to be...
she was a very small girl.
Yeah, petite, right?
Not to say that small girls can't be strong. If you got, an adrenaline going, or, you know what I mean? It's maybe, hey.
Or if she was in a panic due to a hallucination. Like you said, adrenaline.
Yeah. Or did somebody leave the tank open for some reason?
And who would want to own up to that also?
Oh, no, because you just wouldn't.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't. In September 2013, Elisa's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the Cecil Hotel, claiming the hotel failed to inspect and seek out hazards in the hotel that presented an unreasonable risk of danger to hotel guests. And 2 years later, the lawsuit was dismissed because the hotel said We are not foreseeing somebody actually going up to the roof, and certainly didn't foresee somebody going into the tanks or even going near the water tanks. And mind you, they took the time to not have the ladders on the tanks. But still, it wouldn't be, I guess it wouldn't be a reasonable lawsuit. And also, I don't understand why her parents were pursuing financial compensation for it. Maybe funeral expenses, possibly. But that sort of didn't sit right with me.
No, it just seems more like they should want to know what happened more so than want some kind of reparation for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, there were alarms and everything. That's why this is just such a weird one, because it seemed everything just was not functioning that day.
Yeah.
There was no alarm set. The cameras weren't on or working. Just so happens.
Yeah, it just seemed to be a perfect catastrophe, really.
Yeah, and I can't, when you go to hotels or any really, maybe even an office building, if you go out the wrong door or fire door, alarm's going to go off. That's just the way it is. And just that day, it just didn't, the alarms weren't working.
Going, yeah.
In 2017, the Cecil Hotel, now known as Stay on Main, closed for remodel. Yes, I think just considering the bad history of it, it's going to be one of those places that people are going to visit because of what happened there. It's not because they're going to go there because of the historical value, really. Although it is actually very beautiful. It's too bad that it's gone downhill, but they have to keep it up now. Now, the only other thing I'm going to mention about the hotel is the amount of unaliving that actually happened there. So this, to me, was the first thing I wondered, is why, if Elisa went up to the roof, what she could have done from the roof instead of going into the water tank, which was, the Cecil Hotel has a history of that. People jumping off, so could have just been her state of mind, but that was sort of another thing I was thinking about. It's, to me, just like an average person, it's such a mystery, but the people who are in control of the case just are not, like so many other cases, just not even considering these. It's not going to bring her back, but can we just look at this?
Yeah, take a bit again? Of a further look. Like, I wonder if there was any security cameras on surrounding buildings that might have seen something at some point.
I mean, it was in the 2000s, so it would surprise me.
Yeah.
Somebody knows something. It seems that in the end they just sort of dismissed it, because she's not here to say it was her mental illness or not. She can't speak. There's all of these facts that are just being ignored, and why. The only reason that possibly is just because it is a cover-up, because how can you overlook all of these things?
Yeah.
These most obvious things, right? So
there should be a lead somewhere.
Well, they just probably don't want to bother anymore, and that's really, really sad. But that is the story of Elisa Lam, and just just a bit of our feeling on it. I still feel like there's a lot more to it. She certainly did suffer with mental illness, and I feel so sorry for her, but I feel like she's being disrespected here a little bit. She's being put aside, like so many, Yeah. But thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, guys.
We're going to do, some sort of mysteries that involve crime, every now and again, because it's really, really interesting, and you can't overlook the facts.
No, and as we have today, if we discuss something with somebody, you get some maybe new ideas.
Yeah.
It may not lead to anything, but it's interesting to discuss it. Maybe somebody will think of something.
Yeah. I mean, I guess we can talk about it all we want, but it depends on, the authority figures whether they want to look into it or not. Probably not. I feel like they would have.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good theories here. But anyway, we will see you in the next podcast. Thank you, guys.
See you in the next one.
Bye now.
Bye.